Hello economic students, in this video we are looking at the terms of trade. We need to understand its meaning and its measurement and the factors that would impact the terms of trade. Now there are lots of factors that would impact the terms of trade, which will make sense in a moment when we look at what it actually means. But VCA have given us two factors to learn. It's commodity prices and production costs in our trading partners. So basically the cost of production for our overseas trading partners. So what does it mean? I think there's two good ways to think about it. There's many ways to think about it, but the first one is it's a ratio of export prices to import prices. Okay. The way I like to think about it is that it's a measurement of export prices received by Australia versus import prices paid by Australia. The measurement reflects this because the terms of trade is equal to our export price index divided by our import price index, and we times it by 100. Now you may be thinking, I've seen this word index before and it measured prices of something else. Yes, spot on. It measured our CPI, or it was our CPI, our consumer price index, where we measured a basket of consumer prices. We're going to do exactly the same thing here, except we're measuring export prices and import prices. So we're not worried about the average cost of living for a household. We're worrying about what's the average price of an export versus the average prices of our imports. And when I say average, it's a weighted average if you want to get technical. So what goes in that basket? And before I do that, I should just say here as a little side note, the terms of trade is all about prices. And I think there's a temptation to think if prices change, if our export prices change, then that will lead to a change in quantity demanded, which makes perfect sense. But whenever you're thinking about the terms of trade, I think we just need to think prices and nothing else. So don't think about quantity. So what would actually show up in our export price index? So remember, just like the CPI index, there'd be someone at the ABS and they'd have a spreadsheet with a list of exports, things like education, tourism, our minerals that we export overseas, iron ore and coal and other things. And what they would do with that export price index is they would track changes in each of those different goods or services from one period to the next. That spreadsheet would spit out an index number, and the same would happen for our import price index. It's just that we would measure changes in the prices of other things that we import, like technology and TVs and machinery and medicines and oil. We spit out two separate index numbers, so we might have 100 and 100, and we divide them, times it by 100, and that would give us our terms of trade as 100. That would in fact be our base year, and then we would track movements from that base year. So to go a little bit deeper, as I just said, if you had terms of trade in year 1, 100 over 100 times it by 100, it equals 100. Now if in year 2, export prices, the export prices that we received, increased by 5 index points, or 5%, but import prices increased by 10 index points, or 10%, then if we divided export prices by import prices, times it by 100, we would get a terms of trade of 95.4, which is an unfavorable movement. And anytime there's a movement in the terms of trade, you need to think about this. Is this good for the Australian economy, or is this bad? Now, without even measuring the terms of trade, you can see if export prices go up a little bit, but our import prices go up much more, that means there's more leakages and less injections in relative to, there's more leakages relative to injections, I had to get that right, and therefore that would slow the Australian economy down. So it's an unfavorable movement, or we might call it a deterioration. In year 3 here, we've gone from the export price index has increased by 10 index points from 105 to 115, and our import price index has actually decreased. So straight away we should be thinking, well, this is a good thing for the Australian economy, because if we are receiving more for our exports and paying less for our imports, we're going to receive more injections relative to leakages. And it's reflected in the terms of trade, because when we calculate it, the terms of trade goes from 95 to 109.5, or a favorable movement. So just to look at a little bit of the history of the terms of trade in Australia, we had two big booms in the terms of trade. One was the mining boom over sort of 2004 to 2012, and you can see terms of trade has increased from here all the way up to 120, which is basically reflecting an increase in commodity prices. The other one was a post-COVID / Russian invasion of Ukraine. I've talked about a lot about this in class, but Australia seems to be the beneficiary of, disasters around the world. The Russian invasion of Ukraine led to big spikes in commodity prices, particularly coal and gas, and you can see that here on the terms of trade when we received a much higher price for our exports. Before I stop this video, we probably should say that imports tend to be relatively stable in Australia. The price of our imports tend to be relatively stable, and therefore it's mainly commodity prices that drive the terms of trade. In the next video, we'll go through those factors. Bye for now.